Well, thank you very much. Let's move on now to Central New York and hear a presentation from Rob Simpson and then Andrew Fish.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor, all of you for inviting us here today. I think Harvey's right. You are going to see a lot of similarity in these presentations, and I think for good reason, because so much of upstate New York, the challenges that our communities face from Buffalo through the Hudson Valley have been very similar and remain very similar. We have been taking a ground-up approach to the formulation of our regional strategy. We've not engaged an outside consultant in the work that we're doing for a couple of reasons, clearly the resource issues being one of them, but I think also we made an intentional decision very early on that the community that plans together in the beginning is ultimately going to stand together around the implementation of this vision. We believe that the strategy that we are laying out through this process is one that will survive and be a part of our community lexicon for a long time to come. And we've engaged some of our best and brightest thinkers in business and civic life and academia in that process. We've had incredible public outreach. Actually, we've probably more than tripled the traditional public outreach that we've seen in many of our previous years, and a large portion of those 1,700 participants that have come out to our public sessions are individuals who have never participated in a regional council meeting before. That's something that Andrew, as the chair of our public participation work group, deserves a tremendous amount of recognition for. Ultimately, we've seen about 800 ideas and projects that have been submitted to our council for consideration. That's a huge volume of work, but it's given us a really rich foundation from which to build. So how have we gone about building our strategy? First, we have a very diverse economy. We have no industry that is a dominant industry in Central New York. We have 13 industries that represent somewhere between 5 and 9% of total employment, and we have sought out leaders in those industries. We've used data sources like UBRI and other partners that we've engaged to help us understand what's happening in each of those individual industries. Most importantly, to help us understand the points of connectivity between those industries. Of the 11 work groups that we set out at the beginning of this process, asking them to drive our agenda forward, every one of those work groups made a presentation on July 22nd at what we called our strategy summit. And they took 2.5 months of work and condensed that into a 5 or 6 page white paper, and ultimately made a 5 to 7 minute presentation about what they believe are the most important drivers for us to move forward. We also felt like it was very important, however, because we didn't have the ability to engage an external consultant, to not get caught in our own siloed thinking. Sometimes when you have your head down pushing against the plow, you make the mistake of believing your own narrative. We invited a team of national experts in from all over the country who sat with us and essentially scrutinized the plans and the strategies that our work groups developed. These are people who come from a wide variety of sectors, including industry, urban revitalization, workforce development, and they have really enriched our work in significant ways. So what is our plan? We will also be pretty specific in what we detail here for you today. We want to invest in key drivers. We also believe that there are critical enablers of prosperity. And ultimately, our goal is to build an economy that doesn't just create jobs, but that rises all boats. And that means an inclusive economy for the future. From a driver standpoint, I mentioned the diversity of our economy. One of the realities is that while we have an incredibly diverse economy, we have a very clear core competency when it comes to technology. We have more patents that are emerging in the precision sensing and data analytics space in Central New York than any other industry. This is a competency that cuts across our medical device industry, our defense industry, our environmental systems industry, our information security industry, our agricultural industry. This is something Central New York is good at, and we want to be great. This means additional investments in private sector companies looking to build this technology area, and it means shared asset investments that we think can help position Central New York as a global leader for precision sensing and data analytics. One of those specific industry verticals is a project that, frankly, we've been working on cooperatively with the Mohawk Valley for many years now. This is something that we have been looking at for quite a long time, based and rooted firmly in our region's capabilities around radar, aerospace, cybersecurity. This is a rapidly growing market, and this is what we call unmanned systems. This market is expected within the next 10 years to be a $100 billion industry. It is in its infancy, but the applications for unmanned systems are incredibly broad, the largest being agriculture, but they range in everything from agriculture to fire and rescue, search and rescue, and as you may have seen in news reports, companies like Amazon that are looking at drone delivery of packages. There is a huge market opportunity, and frankly, there is not a place in this country that has a leg up in this space. There are 5 or 6 places around the U.S. that are in a very strong competitive position. Central New York and the Mohawk Valley are one of them because of a test site designation we won from the FAA most recently. And finally, from a driver's perspective, we believe in the agricultural opportunity as well. The reality is, over the next 40 years, this world is going to need to produce as much food as we have over the last 10,000 years combined. That creates a massive opportunity for places that have cheap land, that have access to fresh water, and that understand how to move goods to market. To speak to Rich's question earlier in terms of what's required, one of the critical pieces in order to be successful at moving our agricultural products and our manufactured commodities to international markets, those big global growth markets, is a transportation infrastructure. We have for many years in Central New York sought to develop an inland port, an intermodal container facility that would allow us to move product from Central New York to other parts of the world more effectively. We've identified a site, a lead partner in the Port of Oswego. We have a project here that will directly create 400 jobs in an intermodal container yard, and we have the opportunity to build somewhere between 1.5 million and 3 million square feet of manufacturing, distribution, and warehousing space in what we're calling our manufacturing and global logistics hub. This project offers tremendous potential, but not the least of which is the ability to reduce the cost of moving a container from Central New York to foreign markets by 40 to 50%. That means additional competitiveness for every manufacturer, for every agricultural producer, and our first customer for this facility, we believe, will be a global agricultural name. We also believe, however, similar to the Buffalo story, that having a quality of place is critical. And in our community, that means not just Syracuse, but it means communities like Auburn and Oswego, where there are tremendous investments that are being made in our quality of life. We have a strategy, to use Syracuse as an example, that effectively reorients our city to our lake. As many of you know, we've had the second most polluted lake in America for the better part of 70 to 100 years. We're recently rediscovering our lake, like investments the governor's made in our amphitheater along the West Shore. And we believe that connecting these assets from our University Hill, where our intellectual power is, to our central business district, where so much of our employer base is, to assets like the lakefront, our airport, and our new amphitheater will enable us to build the type of world-class community that we know Syracuse and Central New York can be. And finally, I would point out that we have a real challenge in Central New York. Most recently, there was an announcement that the Lieutenant Governor is well aware of a signature business, Welsh Allen in Central New York, that was sold. And in any other community, a $2 billion exit would be something that people would celebrate. The challenge in Central New York is that we're not filling the pipeline fast enough. We are not creating enough new companies, and you see we have fewer percentage of our total job growth coming from companies under 5 years old than any other region across upstate New York. Recently, we've made significant investments in our incubator system. We've launched a $15 million venture capital fund, which is growing. We believe that in order to be successful in the long run, we have to be able to start companies more quickly than we lose them, and we want to double down on this space. But ultimately, we cannot ignore the fact that too many of the people in our communities are living in poverty. At a recent council event, I was asked the question about how residents in Central New York perceive the council process, and the simple and honest answer is it depends on where they sit. We are seeing pockets of tremendous economic activity, and we are seeing pockets of further concentrating poverty. Too few jobs exist in geographic proximity to where our employment opportunities are. We need to do a better job of being intentional where we cite jobs. We need to be much more focused as it relates to our workforce development activities, and we have to improve our transit system if we are going to allow people to gain access to the types of jobs that we are looking to create through this process. So all in all, we think we have a strategy that will last us a very long time. We believe it's rooted in our core strengths as a region. We also believe that in addition to having a sound strategy, we have specific tangible projects with leverage and jobs that will demonstrate an immediate impact for Central New York, and not just touch places like Syracuse, but incubators throughout our region, every part of our community. We believe that with the investment that the state is considering making, we have a very bright future in Central New York.
Great, thank you, Rob. Any questions from the panel?
Commissioner Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Nice presentation, Rob. So your presentation touched upon the unmanned aircraft systems, which, as we know, I think has become a significant sector and has resulted in collaboration between your region and Mohawk Valley. Can you tell us a little bit how you identified that and how you undertook these successful collaborative efforts and what's ahead?
Sure. What I would tell you, starting several years ago, our collaboration with the Mohawk Valley really rooted around our pursuit of one of 6 federally designated FAA test sites. That was a federal competition. There were 50 communities around the country that chased that designation, and partnering together, we were able to secure such a designation. Specifically, as it relates to our Upstate Revitalization Initiative, this was a private sector-driven element. This was not something that was driven from our council down, but rather the companies that are investing in our radar systems and our sense and avoid technologies and our wireless communications technologies identified this as a major market space where they believe they can sell product, they can make money, they can create jobs, which ultimately I think is what this initiative was all about.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
I have a question. I'm intrigued by you're talking about world-class communities. Howard Zemsky and I talk about cool places to live. And we think that that is essential today. And then you also talked about the fact that you had few young entrepreneurs. It's all coming together in my head. Beyond Syracuse, where else in Central New York are you thinking about fostering and supporting the development of a world-class community or a cool place to live?
I think it's a strategy that is emblematic, and I think you can see roots of it in just about every single one of the major cities around the region. I think part of our challenge in this process, and frankly I think it is a bit of a challenge, is identifying ways that strategy ports to some of our more rural communities throughout the region, and that means thinking about how we support the creativity of interesting places in our main streets and villages as well, and we have many of those throughout Central New York. Oswego, for instance, has come up with a number of very significant opportunities, particularly as it relates to their waterfront revitalization. In Auburn, there are significant opportunities around tourism, including some opportunities around national parks investments that we're very excited about. All of these elements, I think, are critical in terms of our ability to demonstrate that the economic reach of this Upstate Revitalization Initiative is more than just downtown Syracuse, but ultimately is a regional approach.
So we can look forward to hearing how you're going to develop some of these cool places to live.
Absolutely.
All right.